in for a treat right now with the next panel, which is food for thought. I've always been passionate about healthy eating and the notion of managing your health and well-being by what you consume and what you eat. And we have an amazing, inspiring group of people here with an amazing collaboration that I'm super excited to share. And we have a wonderful moderator, Diane Hatz. She's here with us together, from Boma. And I got to know Diane through our dear mutual friend, Lara Stein, who's actually the founder of TEDx. I mentioned Oren Erickson. I hosted more than 10 years ago at one of the first TEDx's at TEDx Silicon Valley at Stanford University. And I got to know Lara really well in that process. And that was a delight. I think if one of you guys have some feedback there, so if you are not speaking, if you can mute for a second. Yes, that would be great. And so that's been a real delight and a great treat. But also Lara introduced me to Diane. What Lara is doing with Boma now, after she literally built the TEDx global movement that came. I still remember the first week of TEDx when Chris Anderson and Lara just announced it at the very beginning, saying, "Wow, if we have one day 30 conferences around the world, it will be amazing."
Yeah. It's like 10,000 now.
Yeah, exactly. 30,000 conferences after. A really global movement was built, right? Which was pretty remarkable. So one of the first ones that we did at Stanford, TEDx Silicon Valley, was amazing. And then Lara went to build Boma, which is a wonderful organization that does a lot of these same things with convening people globally. And Boma Grow is part of Boma, and Diane Hatz is managing Boma Grow, and she will tell you more about it in a few minutes. And she dedicated her life and career to healthy eating and really helping people understand what it means to be healthy via eating. And we have an amazing chef here, Aran Goldstein, who is going to not only inspire as part of this panel, but also going to cook for us an amazing dinner tonight, a joint dinner, which is part of what FestiHealth is doing. It's all about learn, experience, and connect. Learn, experience, connect. So this panel itself is about the connection that we created. So I met all of you guys in different contexts, and now we're all coming together to share an amazing idea. So Aran is going to do this panel to create an experience in real time on what Dr. William Li is actually talking about and researching and working on for years now. So bringing that to life a little bit is just fantastic. And then he's also going to help us cook a healthy dinner, which I'm super excited about. I am going to cook, and I'm going to have dinner with you together later. So very much looking forward to that, Aran. And then Shebani Sethi Dalai from Stanford University is joining us today, also to bring one more aspect, because she's doing a lot of work on the psychological aspect of eating and this whole notion of how it's related to our immune system, which I think that's what we're going to talk about today: immunity through better nutrition. So we're excited to have you, and of course Dr. William Li, which is this panel has been a lot around the work that he's done over time. So I will leave you in the wonderful hands of Diane Hatz to take it from here, and I promise you that you're on for an amazing treat. Enjoy.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
I think before we start, everyone should give a virtual round of applause to Ron. I've been on and off all day, and he's done an amazing, amazing job. So Ron, we're applauding you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Food for Thought panel. Today, we'll be talking about food as medicine, specifically how we can use food to help build immunity and lessen the effects of COVID-19. This is especially important because experts are saying that up to 70% of the population will contract COVID-19. So it's less a matter of if we'll get it, but more a matter of when we will get it. So we only have about 40 minutes. I will try to check the chat. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in. I'll try to work it in, but we have a lot of discussion ahead of us. Ron did a casual intro. I have a little more formal intro. So I want to give everyone a background of our three guests today because they are amazing experts in their field. Dr. William Li, he's a world-renowned physician, scientist, speaker, and author of Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself. His groundbreaking work has impacted more than 70 diseases, including cancer, diabetes, blindness, heart disease, and obesity. His TED Talk, Can We Eat to Starve Cancer, has garnered more than 11 million views. He is best known for leading the Angiogenesis Foundation. So our second guest we're very excited to have is Dr. Shebani Sethi Dalai. Dr. Sethi Dalai is a double board-certified physician in obesity medicine and psychiatry. She is the founding director of Stanford University's Metabolic Psychiatry program and Silicon Valley Metabolic Psychiatry, a new center in the Bay Area focused on optimizing brain health by integrating low-carb nutrition, comprehensive psychiatric care, and treatment of obesity with associated metabolic disease. I'm already so impressed by your resume. She is a clinical faculty at Stanford University School of Medicine, where she researches the important relationship between nutrition, metabolic dysfunction, inflammation, and mental health for clinical trials. And our third guest is Chef Aran Goldstein. Chef brings 15 years of global experience in the food industry to the table. He is the founder of Noah's Table, an online educational platform and private chef business. His time as a chef, traveler, educator, and dad has given him a holistic view of how food is prepared and shared around the world. Aran currently serves as the chief chef advocate for Plates, a marketplace connecting local food artisans with passionate food lovers. And I'm Diane Hatz, your moderator for today. I've been a healthy food advocate for over 20 years in various different positions. I'm currently the founder and executive director of Change Food, which is a nonprofit. Our latest program is called Plant, Eat, Share. We believe that everyone should be able to eat healthy food. So we are encouraging communities around the world to plant food in public places so that and enjoy it. I'm also, as Ron mentioned, the founder and head of Boma USA. It's focused on building a regenerative food system for all. And Boma USA is the food and farming vertical of Boma, which is a new global community that, as Ron said, Laura Stein has recently founded within the past year. So let's jump in with Dr. Li. I know that you're actively involved in research and findings surrounding COVID-19. What's the latest update you can provide us about the disease and its effects?
Well, thank you for that nice introduction. This has been really a fantastic program today. And I thought I would maybe bring to light something that's affected all of us, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. This thing came and hit us all out of the blue a few months ago, broadsided us. And out of 200,000 years of human existence, we humans have never met this virus, this SARS-CoV-2 virus. And so it's been a really tumultuous last few months. And researchers, including myself, have jumped in to try to unravel the enigma of what this virus actually is and is doing to our bodies, and how does food and immunity actually relate to that. So I'll try to just give you a top line. This is a respiratory virus. It's a type of a coronavirus, which is the kind of viruses that produce a common cold. So in the beginning, when we heard that this was like a bad flu, it's not even related to the flu. It's more related to a cold. And that actually is troubling because we know how contagious colds can actually be. The coronavirus is a respiratory virus, so we breathe it in. And probably the battle mostly is fought in our noses and our mucous membranes. And if it actually manages to sneak beyond our defenses in our nose, it actually creeps down into our lungs, where it can actually cause a lung infection. So the respiratory viruses cause a respiratory infection, really bad inflammatory disease of the lung. But what we've started to notice is that there are all these odd systemic, meaning whole body effects in different organs. The brain's involved, the toes are involved, the kidneys are involved, and we're beginning to, and the heart's involved. And so we're beginning to realize this is much more than a common cold. This is actually much more than a respiratory infection. This is something that we haven't really seen before. And research that I actually have done that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine last week showed that this respiratory virus, once it gets in the lungs, actually makes a beeline for our blood vessels and infects our blood vessel cells, the lining in our blood vessels. And we've actually developed the first pictures showing the virus invading those cells and filling them like a gumball machine. And once that actually occurs, we wind up actually having blood vessel circulation problems, including blood clotting, that may help to explain some of these other phenomena that we're seeing in the brain and the heart and the lungs, even in the toe. And if it turns out that COVID-19 will resolve in most people, as we think, and the virus goes away out of the body, we recover, we may be left with some damage to our blood vessels that will result in long-term need to care for our circulation. So what does all that mean for our immunity, and how does it relate to food? It means that our immune system is more important than ever to be able to form a shield so that we actually can prevent an infection. And if we get it, we prevent it from actually rooting into our body and causing these serious, devastating effects that occur in some patients. It turns out that food can help support our immunity at a very fundamental level, and that deficits in micronutrients can actually leave us malnourished and immune suppressed even when we're surrounded by food. So this is something pretty important to understand. And secondly, researchers are beginning to actually understand there are certain foods that have been studied in humans in clinical trials that can actually boost immunity. And that's actually really good news. And it begins to build on the food.
We're going to get to that. Don't give away the prize before we get there. But you said that the COVID-19 is more like a cold and it's contagious. You know, one of the things that scares me personally, especially knowing that it's attacking blood vessels in different parts of the body, it's not just a respiratory illness, is that I keep hearing that it's going to be a while before there's a vaccine. What can we do to protect ourselves? Like, businesses are starting to open up. People are starting to go to restaurants. They're going out shopping. What can we do to help ourselves as we wait for a vaccine or after we have a vaccine?
Well, in addition to the well-known public health measures of masking, physical distancing, washing hands, and actually not going into crowds, the other things that we need to be able to do are really lifestyle related. We need to get good sleep, lower our stress, maintain regular physical activity, kind of the normal things. The rules haven't changed. And one of those important rules is also to eat in the most healthy way possible. And healthy eating really involves whole foods, mostly plant-based, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, healthy fats when you actually have them, and including potentially some seafood as well, and to avoid ultra-processed foods and processed meats. These are all sort of the rules haven't changed, but I think that we can now sharpen our focus on some of the foods that are important for immunity.
Can you just let people know, because it's very easy to say that, but you are a researcher, you are a scientist, you're an expert in this. Like, what is your background? Like, what gives you the expertise to tell us this? Like what is this all based on?
Right, so I'm internal medicine. That means I take care of young and old, men and women, healthy and sick. And my goal has always been to try to get people back to health or keep them in health. And I realized as a medical doctor, I was really not taught much about nutrition during my education or training. Mm-hmm. And yet the patients I was seeing time and again would ask me what they could do for themselves beyond medication. And it felt wrong that we didn't have that answer. I happen to be one of these unusual doctors, and scientists who's actually been involved with drug development, biotechnology. And in my work at the Angiogenesis Foundation, we've been at the center of developing 34 FDA-approved drugs and devices. So we actually have some really good street cred of translating science into practice, something practical that can help people. And I thought what we could do is begin studying foods using the same rigorous systems that we use to develop drugs. And, it really is food as medicine. And what we've discovered was in many cases, when you test foods and medicines head to head, side by side, you get these remarkable effects that we didn't even, that we might have suspected, but we never could prove that you can actually influence the body in very important ways, similar to medicine. So I think that this is really what we're bringing to the table now. Food is medicine is not just a slogan, not just a T-shirt, bumper sticker, hand-wavy idea, but really a science whose time has come.
So that's a great segue into our other guest, Dr. Sethi Dalai. So you recently wrote an op-ed, which I have to say, I found a very interesting read. You mentioned that only 12% of Americans are healthy, metabolically healthy, as you say. So what exactly does that mean?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. I did want to comment with something Dr. Lee said, and I identify with nutrition not being in our medical curriculum, and I also felt similarly and strongly that food is medicine. And so I went out to get that special training in obesity medicine. And at my heart and my core, I'm a psychiatrist. And my husband's an infectious disease physician at Stanford as well. And I felt like there was a double investment going into this. And when the shelter in place order came for our county, we went to, our neighborhood Safeway, and I saw people loading up their carts with popcorn and Hawaiian Punch and Pop-Tarts and anything off the shelves that, was processed, essentially. The things that were green and the vegetables, they weren't actually all gone. And so I found that quite interesting, which inspired me to write that piece for The Hill. But to answer your question, when thinking about good metabolic health, it's not just the absence of these diseases that we hear about, like diabetes and fatty liver and hypertension or cardiovascular disease, but it's also a spectrum of illness. So what I'm talking about or getting at is this insulin resistance, which can often appear much earlier before these diseases are clinically apparent. And I like to tell people, especially the audience today, to really think about this number. That 44% of the adults in our country today have either prediabetes or diabetes. Now that is a lot of people, right? And so the guidelines around how we define metabolic health, they've been changing. And now they're more stringent. The criteria has got stricter, and so hence the 12%. That I wrote, but even when they were less stringent, it was still low at about 19%. So in fact, if we look at the reproductive age group, when we're supposed to be at our prime, the proportion of those who are metabolically healthy is also alarmingly low, and can partly explain why we have higher infertility rates.
So can I ask you a clarifying question? Because I'm a layperson, I'm not an MD, I don't completely when you say metabolically healthy, I'm still a little confused. Are you saying metabolically healthy has to do with insulin resistance and how well your metabolism works?
Yeah, I'm talking about insulin resistance, changes that food definitely plays a part in changing our hormone levels, our glucose levels, the fluctuation of those glucose levels, and what does that do to our organs? What does that do to our body? And so a lot of people won't understand even what insulin's resistance and glucose, the relation. But can you just sort of explain metabolism, insulin resistance, and glucose so people, a total layperson can sort of understand? Because I think this is super, super, super important as regards to food as medicine. Sure. Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that. So insulin resistance is a term that we use in medicine to describe when there's a hormone in our body, the pancreas creates insulin, churns it out every time you eat food, specifically food that has higher in sugar. Insulin spikes up because what it does is that it stores fat. It also takes away blood sugar from the blood circulation. And so it's a very important hormone. It regulates all kinds of things. It's a growth hormone. And so these fluctuations, and by the way, there's many other hormones involved. It's quite complex, but when we talk about metabolically healthy, we're talking about the amount of resistance that you have to the hormones not working anymore because we have such a high amount of it that it doesn't do its job anymore. So that's the idea behind that.
So how's that? And Dr. Lee and Chef Aran, you can jump in too. I mean, feel free to jump in, but how does this now relate to COVID-19?
So I'm happy for anyone to jump in. I was going to say that we know that the data coming out of Italy, China, and now New York is that obesity increases the risk of poor health outcomes. So that means the risk of severe infection, we're looking at mechanical ventilation and death. And that's much greater in those with COVID-19. So like you said, a lot of us are going to have COVID-19 or get it, but how many of us are going to actually have severity of infection or death? And there are many reasons for that. And I want to stress that it's not just a compromised respiratory system that you would think about in obesity, but also what we call in the obesity medicine community is sick fat, because there's visceral fat that surrounds the abdominal organs and arteries, and they leak molecules that are inflammatory. And that leads to harmful immunological changes. And so poor glucose control, so having a high level of blood glucose, affects the immune system. It affects what the immune cells do, your fighting cells. But it's not just about obesity and type 2 diabetes and being overweight. It's also people who have normal weight can have metabolic dysfunction. So I just wanted to stress that, because it's really important, because people don't necessarily realize that you can be normal weight, you can appear healthy, but you can still have insulin resistance, essentially.
I just want to thank you for that, because as someone who struggled with her weight her whole life, I get very angry when people fat shame and people just assume certain things, and that people who look healthy and perfectly sized can be just as unhealthy as someone who's overweight. So thank you for that. Dr. Lee, did you want to?
I was just going to say that the same things that actually make us sick later on start really early in life. And that's really what Shebani is actually describing, is a process that starts early. It's formed by how we grow up in our activities. I mean, really from the time of childhood. And this metabolic problem, which is like prediabetes, actually weakens our immune system. And among the other straws it pulls out from the camel's back, I think it opens the door for COVID-19 to affect those people more severely. So we don't understand everything about this disease yet, but the more we learn, the more we understand that the things that actually make you sick later can make you more sick today from the infection.
Got it. So I want to throw one more thing into this discussion. Dr. Sethi Dalai, you research metabolism, inflammation, and mental health. How are those three things related? Like, how does mental health come into this issue?
Yeah, so the way I like to think about it is that anything that disrupts our natural state of our brain is going to have consequences. So we've talked about metabolic disease affecting immunity, affecting organ systems, but it affects an organ that we often overlook, the brain, right? The brain is mental health. And there's a crucial link, but there's a complex relationship between that. And that's between metabolic dysfunction, between food and mental health. So when I'm talking about mental health, I'm talking about mood disorders, depression, bipolar illness, psychosis, even eating disorders. They've been shown to be very strongly associated with increases in inflammation in the body. And it's also associated with higher rates of obesity, diabetes, and metabolic disease than even the general population. And we know the general population numbers are already not great. So in this population, it's even worse.
Right.
So I'm finding in clinical practice that when we treat as targets, when we treat inflammation and blood sugar and other metabolic dysfunction as more of a root cause, then we see the psychiatric symptoms improve. Now, that's not necessarily a cure-all approach, but it is a significant improvement in mood and energy, in sleep, quality of life. And so that's what I'm studying, and what I'm working on currently is enrolling patients looking at ketogenic diet interventions, specifically in those that struggle with obesity, inflammation.
So you said ketogenic diet, and I know that Chef Aran is over there, and he is like, when am I going to get the microphone? So you are the expert in food and cooking. So what do you think about changing people's eating habits because of the problems with metabolism and inflammation and insulin resistance? Obviously, it's what we're eating. So as an expert in food and how people eat, how would you tie together like educating people and getting them to try foods? Like, how can we get people to shift?
So, let me first preface by just stating what I think is obvious to everyone, that this topic is so challenging and nuanced and personal to all of our individual experiences. And food, as we know, touches upon every aspect of our lives, every aspect of the human experience. It's so deeply tied to our past, which we can all speak to as making this conversation really, really challenging. And I want to first quickly say, because it might be easy for people to say, well, you're a skinny guy. It's easy for you to, eat well. You're also a chef. It's easy for you to cook. Let me just quickly tell you that I came to this work because I was a severely overweight kid that struggled through adolescence. And I could get into all kinds of really challenging stories about that. But I kind of grew through the 80s and 90s of trying to sift through the information of what's good for me, what's bad for me, like why is it that I'm putting weight on, and evolving with the ever-changing information that was coming out. So, I used to read Men's Health and, think that downing a bunch of skim milk was a good idea and fearing fat and eating just plain pasta, to then flipping that, a decade later to like, oh, but wait, too many carbs now and more fat's good. So I've gone through all that evolution as a person concerned with what I was eating and how it affected how I showed up in the world. Okay. So I grew into placing a value on my food decisions and how the decisions made me feel. Okay.
Is that what got you to shift? Because I'm really interested. It's very difficult for someone who's extremely overweight to shift their eating habits. Like, what gave you that motivation to do it and stick with it?
I don't know what was inherent in me, but I always loved food. Okay. So I think a lot of the shift came from that personal experience and knowing that food was partly responsible for holding me back as a kid. So I remember, middle school, I ate pizza and not good pizza, for almost 2 years in a row, and I remember that's the same time when for the first time in my life, I started to struggle in school, to feel tired all the time. And I know that overlap with adolescence and there's a lot going on at that time, but I think that marked me. And I think that as I grew, I decided, I'm going to help other people eventually. And I knew I wanted to be a cook. And that's how my evolution and arc as a cook has developed, to where I became of course I was obsessed with the taste and the experience, but I became much more concerned with where was my food coming from, who was I supporting that's growing food with integrity in a deliberate manner. And my foremost goal was to make sure that who I was cooking for was truly nourished from that food. And that I did my best to make sure that food was really clean. Okay. So in terms of how we can shift and make changes, it's not easy. But what I do see over and over is that there's a lot of overthinking and that there's a lot of noise that we need to cut through. And what I would urge people to do is to take a step back and breathe a little bit. And just kind of, I used to hike a lot, and I remember learning from kind of a hiking guru, you just put one foot in front of the other, just keep going. And I think if we can engage with the cooking process that way and get curious and start to really just look at it and say, I wonder how I can approach this, and maybe Google a video. I mean, it's ubiquitous, the cooking videos are everywhere and the support is everywhere. But before we get to the top 10 list that I know Dr. Lee is going to get to, what I want to quickly mention that when we get to that list, it's as important what's not on that list as anything else. And as Dr. Lee mentioned, the first step, and when I'm working with people to make changes, is to remove, okay? And if we can take that step of removing the process, that one step gives you such a leg up already. And then it's just a matter of getting in there and learning how to cut an onion, learning how to steam something, and have that process layer. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, when you say remove the process, are you saying remove processed food or remove some type of process? It's
really about, and this is an interesting kind of lens to see this through, because so many of us are quarantined and in home, and we're eating out less, we're making fewer trips to the grocery store. And I found this personally, that if I don't buy it, and if I don't bring it into my home, I'm not going to eat it, right? And it's kind of this idea of, as we know, habits have all kinds to do with friction, right? So we want as little friction between us and a good habit as possible, and as much friction, between a bad habit and us as possible. So if we're buying the cookies and they're there, we're going to eat them. I'm going to eat them for sure, And there are amazing tips, and I know they're kind of cliche, but the idea of not going to the grocery store hungry, it's like a really powerful one. So like eat a big meal, and then go to the grocery store, but plan. And I know it's hard for people, but sitting down, being deliberate about what are we going to eat together, what are we going to try this week, and then being deliberate about that grocery shopping, and then coming back. And I can speak more, and I'll have an opportunity in the class to talk about the things that we can do. What do you do when you get home from the grocery store? How do we store things?
What class?
This cooking class is coming up. It's
what
7
time?
o'clock, unless we're running, I think 7 o'clock right here. And we're going to dive in further, but I'm going to be highlighting Dr. Lee's top 10 list of immune-boosting ingredients. So I've managed to incorporate all of them. And what I do want people to pay attention to, that it's not really about these particular ingredients per se, but it's about just getting in your kitchen and taking a deep breath and having fun with the cooking process. And I know that's not necessarily for everyone, but I think there's a lot to be learned about the process. And I know that you're going to touch upon something else, Diane, but let me just get it before I segue, or you segue. I think that this is not only a good idea for our health, but in a broader lens, or through a broader lens, it's necessary for us to start to engage with our food differently, because our food system, as we know, is teetering on a level of toxicity for not just the environment, but ourselves, that I'm not sure if we can go much further this route. And my belief is that if we can engage with the cooking process, get more curious, learn where our food is coming from, and we produce a world full of savvy cooks, just like I was as a cook in a restaurant that was discerning of where my food was coming from, that would send things back if they came to the restaurant not good enough. I think that's what will put pressure on the farmers, on the growers, on the large companies that are producing food. And we know this is happening. This is why we're seeing so many more organics in places like Walmart and Target. And that is a positive thing. And I do see immense power in combining the power of the big companies and the little guys to tack all these complicated solutions together.
So you touched on our top 10 foods. So we only have about 7 minutes left. So Dr. Lee, you're the expert in what foods to eat to build immunity. What do you suggest people eat to help lessen impacts, to build immunity so we can help lessen impacts of COVID-19?
Well, I think that Chef Aran actually made a really good point, which is there's a top 10 list. I'm about to tell it to you, but really it's really about diversity and quality of food that we can actually find. I'm going to give you 10 foods that from a list of more than 200 that I wrote about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease. You can get the gigantic list in the book, but I'll give you a couple of ones that come to my mind that I'm actually eating in this COVID era. Number one, mushrooms, because they contain vitamin D, which can be very important for the immune system to support. And also they contain a fiber called beta-glucan that actually turns out lights up the antibodies in our saliva and our mucus that actually can help fight viruses. Important. Broccoli sprouts are the baby 3 or 4 day old sprouts. If you can't find them, the grown-up broccoli is just as good. They contain a chemical that's called sulforaphane. Now, I'm naming one chemical, but really there are tens of thousands of chemicals that probably contribute. And it's amazing. They've actually shown that if you're getting the flu vaccine, not for COVID, but for the flu, drinking a broccoli sprout shake can actually ramp up your immune response by 22 times to the flu vaccine in terms of a response. So that's a good thing. Olive oil has been good, actually been shown in human studies to actually improve the types of immune cells that actually kill in foreign invaders like bacteria and viruses. Pomegranate juice actually helps our gut secrete mucus that healthy gut bacteria, our microbiome, love. And our microbiome lives next door in our gut to our immune system. So think about the roommate in college and you knock on the wall. It's a bacteria, a healthy bacteria knocking on the wall. And the immune system on the other side can hear you and go to town. Blueberries and blackberries, great sources of immune activators. Oyster sauce turns out to actually have immune boosting peptides, proteins, as well as polysaccharides. These are natural sugars that are found in oysters. Tomatoes are a great source of vitamin C. Green tea actually, once again, helps your immunity and also lowers your inflammation, which is actually a good thing all around, all the time. And pecans, tree nuts, are another one of my favorites, actually, that can help your gut microbiome and as a source of good, healthy fats as well. So just 10, but there's many more we can talk about, but those are the ones that actually I try to incorporate into my diet as regularly as possible.
So there's one in particular that Chef Aran, I'd love to get your opinion on, and Dr. Lee, obviously, if you want, but it's the pomegranate juice. I saw a video and I knew what that bottle was that you were holding up, but is that really pomegranate juice?
I have 3 different versions of pomegranate. The whole pomegranate that we're going to eat and garnish with. This is pomegranate juice. And, Dr. Lee can attest, it's not inexpensive at all, but this gets to an economic conversation. I think it's a really worthwhile investment. And then there's pomegranate molasses. And now you want to be careful about how you get your pomegranate molasses because some have added sugars. This is simply reduced pomegranate juice. Okay, so it's basically cooked down into it.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to work with both of these tonight.
And many of these ingredients, I think I mentioned tomatoes, but if I didn't, they're one of my favorites.
Yes, you did.
But many of these ingredients are not new ingredients, and they're not trendy ingredients. They're actually old ingredients that come in popular cultures, and it speaks to who we are, how we grew up, where we come from. And I think that that's actually another important thing, that healthy eating isn't about just latching on to the latest trend. It's actually about re-examining who we are as people and then going back and thinking about what we relate to. That's a really important part of health and of our food.
So we have 2 minutes. I knew this was going to happen. So my last question for Chef Aran, and you're going to have to talk really fast, is can you give us some easy suggestions? I know you're going to be doing a cooking class, but can you give us just some simple suggestions? Like those mushrooms look amazing. So,
let me quick, I know we're going to go quick, but what Dr. Lee was saying is what I work on with people, that step by step, what I want is to build intuition. Because the intuition that used to be inherent, that we used to grow into our families, our cultures, and we didn't have to think about what to eat. It was inherent. We learned it from our moms, grandmas, grandpas, dads, okay? So take it step by step and build your own intuition, and this will become much more joyous and much less stressful. But, what I like to say is, when in doubt, very often is, when in doubt, make a soup. Okay, in the colder months and even in the hotter months, as we know that there's a rich tradition in a lot of hot climates to eat hot soups. And the other thing is, when in doubt, make a really good crunchy salad. And we're going to actually do the salad part tonight, and we're going to talk about the other tricks that I have, tricks that I have for just becoming and kind of channeling your inner prep cook, right? And thinking ahead and doing the little things like washing your parsley or your greens before they even make it from your grocery store bag to your fridge, right? Little things like that. Before you go to sleep, soak your beans so they're ready to cook in the morning. Just that little process of reducing that friction so you can just become and kind of build your own rituals that used to be so normal. So the last thing I want to say, we talked so much about the new normal. And I think around food, what we need to come back to is our old normal in so many ways.
I am so sorry I have to cut this off. You guys were amazing. I wish we had 2 more hours. I want to thank everybody who joined us. Dr. Lee has Eat to Beat Disease. Please buy his book. Dr. Sethi Dalai, go to metabolic.psychiatry.com for more information. She also has a private Facebook community. Chef Aran Goldstein, he has noahstable.co, and you can also go to joinplates.com. Please, everyone, check them out, and check out Plan, Eat, Share and Boma Grow USA, because we are changing the food system. Thank you. And I see Ron
for Diane. Oh, she thanked everybody else, but I'm here to thank her for very skillful moderation, and Boma Grow for helping us with this panel and so many other things.